welcome to this week's Diocesan of Dunedin Gospel Conversation. My name is John Graveston and I'm the Child, Youth and Family Educator. This week Michael Godfrey is on leave, so I asked whether I could run this Gospel Conversation and ask a few young adults from our diocese or who have been part of our diocese to contribute their thoughts on this upcoming text. We are being joined by Ben, who is currently finishing his PhD in theology here at the University of Otago and is a ordinand for the Diocese of Waikato and Taranaki. We are being joined by Mona, who is an elected member of St. Paul's chapter and works for St. Matthew's Church. And we're being joined by Sam, who formerly completed his undergrad in theology here in Otago, but is now studying his master's in theology over at St. Andrews. So it's great to have a wide range of young adults joining us today. But before we go ahead and listen to their thoughts, I thought we might recap on this week's text, which comes from the Gospel of Mark, chapter 5, verse 21 to 43. And we're going to recap using a video that I have recommended as a resource for our children's and youth workers throughout the diocese. And I just think it helps us to focus on the gospel before we delve deeper into it. I hope you enjoy it, and we will see you very soon.
He stood on the shore, and a large crowd gathered around him. Then Jairus, one of the rulers in the synagogue, fell at Jesus' feet and begged for his help. "My daughter is about to die. Please come touch her so she will be healed and live," he said. Jesus went with Jairus, and many people followed, crowding around him. In the crowd was a woman who had been bleeding for 12 years. She had seen many doctors and spent all her money, but no one could help her. She was getting worse. The woman had heard about Jesus, so she came up behind him in the crowd and touched his clothes. She said to herself, "If I touch even his clothes, I will be healed." As soon as she touched Jesus' clothes, her bleeding stopped and she knew she was healed. At that moment, Jesus felt that power had gone out of him. He turned around and said, "Who touched my clothes?" Jesus' disciples pointed out that many people were crowded around him, but Jesus kept looking around. The woman, knowing she was healed, came forward and fell before Jesus. She told him what had happened. Jesus said to her, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace. You are healed." While Jesus was speaking, some men came from Jairus' house and said, "Your daughter is dead. Do not bother Jesus anymore." Jesus heard what the men said, and he told Jairus, "Do not be afraid. Just believe." Jesus and 3 of his disciples went to Jairus' house. The people there were crying and wailing loudly. Jesus said, "Why are you crying? The child is not dead. She is sleeping." The people laughed at Jesus, and he told them all to go. Jesus took Jairus and his wife into the room where the child was. He took the girl by the hand and said, "Little girl, get up." Immediately, the girl got up and began walking around. Jairus and his wife were amazed. Jesus told them to give the girl some food and to not tell anyone what had happened.
Well, thank you for joining us here. We have Ben on the left-hand side, top left. If you want to give a wee wave, Ben, that would be great. And on the bottom left is Mona. And then right underneath me on the bottom right is Sam. Brilliant. So thank you all for being with us today. And thank you, Sam's coming to us from England at the moment. So it's nice and early for him. while it's slightly later for us. So it's great to be able to have this technology and connect with each other this way. So just my initial thoughts for this passage when I was reading through it was how I really loved that the two healings that occurred were both a woman, that it wasn't of a man and a woman or two men or a man, the blind man that we hear about. It's of two women that happened. And during the passage, when you read through it, I feel like the disciples, after the woman with the bleeding has touched Jesus, are sort of saying, don't worry about it, it's no problem. And Jesus sort of rebukes them, sort of says, go away, you're being silly. I do want to know, I care, and I really want to know who this person is. And the same with Jairus's daughter. Um, People come to Jesus and say, you know, it's too late, it's past that time. And again, he rebukes them and says, no, it's not. She's just sleeping. I'm still going to come. And I really love that fact that actually he wants to know who they are by the people and is two women. And he's rebuking the men saying, stop being stupid, but actually I care and I want to come along. So that was sort of my initial thoughts when I was reading through. Do you have any thoughts, Ben, when you were going?
Yeah, I think it's quite interesting looking at also in the context of the book as well.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look at the passage just beforehand, we see the story of Jesus liberating and healing the person who's possessed with demons, and he's described as being out of his mind. And then after this as well, we see Jesus goes to his hometown where he's rejected. But the passage straight after that, we see Jesus sending the disciples out to pretty much do exactly as he has been doing, which is going around with authority and healing people. So there's this nice kind of flow within this whole section of the Gospel of Mark, of Jesus kind of demonstrating his power and authority to heal people and to set people free. And then, like you say, the disciples kind of getting in the way of it. But then Jesus goes and sends them out to do just as he's been doing. So that's the kind of initial thoughts that come to my mind.
And I know Katie was saying in the last gospel conversation that whenever Jesus goes onto a boat, there's going to be a teaching moment. And I think the same could be said around whenever there's a crowd, we're going to hear something coming up. What about yourself, Mona? What were your initial thoughts?
What is so fascinating about these verses is the bravery of the first woman. Well, I would like to move from the conclusion to the beginning of the story that, according to our biblical faith, absolute trust, we all should have absolute trust in God's grace beyond hoping or dreaming or thinking that, I know you're great, but would you please fix this obstacle for me or solve this problem for me? So I would imagine that woman in that patriarchal society reached a point that she was shouting, after 12 years of suffering, she was shouting, Lord, to whom shall we go? So she was quite smart and tactful. And she was thinking maybe that, Jesus is coming to our city. So probably there would be a large gathering and big crowd. And I'm imagining it in that rabbinic constructed society that everything is just with a different system of being pure or impure. She's bleeding for quite such long time. She's probably visiting all the GPs and doctors, and she's considered as to be impure. And in this society, there is a strict restriction against blood of a woman, and even worse, when a man is touching blood of a woman. So ritually speaking, she's impure. She should not be touched, but she's taking advantage of this opportunity. And she's approaching Jesus. Later, maybe she can claim that, it was crowded, or it was just so much pressure around me, so I'm guilty. And with that trust in her mind that I would be healed, she does that against all the tradition and rituals and whatever is accepted in her society. and Jesus is asking her a rhetorical question: "Who touched my cloth?" Jesus knew the answer,
Mm.
but Jesus is giving her an opportunity to proclaim her faith or demonstrate her faith in the crowd. And despite all the fear, she did it. And just it shows her absolute bravery and trust in God's grace that she would be healed. So to what extent we can stand up and talk about our faith.
No, I think that's a really, really good initial thoughts. And just thinking, a question that came to my mind when reading through it, and I don't have an answer to this, was in this healing of the woman, it is that very much public proclamation of Jesus doing it. But in the healing of the girl is not. He says, keep it quiet so no one should know this, but make sure she gets something to eat. I love that part, but so practical. But I just think that's very interesting, the two differences in it. So no, thank you. And Sam, coming to you lucky last, did you have any initial thoughts?
Yeah. I feel like my thoughts are drawing some of these together. The significance that Jesus calls the woman first daughter. He acknowledges her, he acknowledges her faith, and as Mona, you were saying, with the ritual uncleanliness, and she's an outcast. She's on the verge of society. For 12 years, she's been unclean, untouchable. And in one moment and one word, Jesus just accepts her existence, accepts her into society, and redeems her. And it's just a simple acknowledgement of her name. It's a shame we don't have her name. She's yet another woman in our canon that isn't named. But by naming her as daughter, that's a very powerful moment. And then again, also, with Jairus's daughter, he's, in a sense, it's kind of who's the main character here. Obviously, the daughter's the one being healed, but it's Jairus. He's, the leader of the community. He's the opposite of the woman who's bleeding. He's prominent in society. He's not on the fringes, and it's Jesus who goes to the daughter, and it's the faith there that is central to this. So that's kind of a roundabout saying, Jesus naming her as daughter is so significant there. And also, my other thought was, as you said, John, kind of this messianic secret, don't tell anyone what, a bit of a surprise. But I did a little reading about that just to kind of work it out, because, if I had a child who was unwell and I said, Jesus, come and heal my child, and this miraculous thing, I would want to tell everyone. I would be up on the rooftops yelling. But I was looking, Reverend Reginald Fuller, in his commentary on the Gospels, he's saying that this is very much Jesus is kind of wanting to keep this quiet because it's a prefiguration of his own death, and the people wouldn't understand necessarily what's happening in this moment, that Jesus healing and raising from the dead is a prefiguration of his own death and resurrection. Also, with the healing of the hemorrhaging woman, it's that he cleanses all sin in his death. So, that's a couple of thoughts from me.
That's brilliant. And I love how you're drawing together, the two daughters that are characters in here, and thought it was, interesting, the small details that the gospel writers put in that the woman was sick and suffering for 12 years, and Jairus's daughter is said to be 12 years old. So just these small wee details that match up, that are interesting. Does anyone have any, potentially just keeping an eye on our time, any where to that we might be able to take from this gospel into the coming week?
I think it's quite interesting in here. I guess the presence that Jesus brings into the story. He comes in, he's approached by Jairus, and then he's approached by the woman who's hemorrhaging. But, something about Jesus just radiates life and radiates his power and his presence. And I think that is an interesting challenge for us. And then I just also, within what you were both talking about, of this kind of these two types of ministry that Jesus portrays, one which is a very public ministry and the one which is kind of a lot more private. But in both times, it's this life-giving presence of Jesus that we see coming through and shining through in both of these forms of ministry. And I guess, thinking ahead, that's kind of what he's inviting his disciples to come into, to kind of be life-giving people and to radiate that out to other people as well.
Well, I think that's great. What about?
I was no, sorry, John, just jump in there. Too eager. It was just that, really, it's a call for faith. Both of these stories, it's the people's faith that is what heals them or raises them, and the faith of the people. And I think that's simply what this gospel is telling us, is in faith, we can be healed, or in faith, that's the essence of our belief.
Yeah. What about yourself, Mona? Do you have any thoughts around where to sort of questions?
Yeah, just repeating two words, just believe. So before any prayers, during prayers, and after that, if you remember, just believe. Yeah.
Oh, brilliant. No, I think I totally agree with that. My sort of thought is, as Sam mentioned earlier on, both these people came from two very different backgrounds, yet they both knelt before Jesus and asked for healing through their faith and through their belief. And I think really that is what we all ask for every day when we pray, just to come closer to him and to give our all to him, so that we can be comforted and supported and go forward in our lives. So thank you, Ben and Mona and Sam, for joining us. And I hope the rest of your weeks goes well. Thank you very much.
Thanks, John.
Cheers.
Thank you, John.